Good evening, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of the Inside Groove right here on Northwest Access TV. I'm your host, Nick Mumley, and he is not dead, folks. Back after his long hiatus is Dustin Tanner.
How long was it gone? A month there? A month long?
I believe so, yeah. We haven't even been on the air for 2 weeks.
No, you had to take a couple weeks off because last week there was an awards dinner here, and then the week before you were off. So we're back. No shortage of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff to get to. Talladega's coming up next week. We had the Charlotte Roval. Dover was just a crazy race. There's a lot of storylines with the silly season to go along with. So plenty of stuff to get to tonight. But Christopher Bell, he becomes the most winningest rookie in Xfinity Series history. He won at Dover in the Xfinity Series on Saturday. We'll talk about that. Chase Elliott picks up his second win of the year. Kind of a strategy play to win Dover on Sunday evening. And then we'll also have Truck Series driver and driver for Dale Jr. in the Xfinity Series next year. Noah Gragson will be on at 6:35 tonight. So super excited about that interview. But before we get to all that, let's talk about the Roval from last weekend because we missed that, and it was just too good to not talk about.
That was such a good race because even in the middle part of the race where it's normally boring, it was such an unknown that fun stuff was happening all over the track. And, you went into a race weekend where nobody's ever raced there before, and all through testing and qualifying and practice, we saw people getting into the wall. We saw people wrecking. And that's how the race turned out. Like, they were just wrecking and having fun. It was a lot of fun to watch. And I'm surprised it was that successful. I didn't think it was going to be that good.
Yeah, I was surprised by that, too. I really thought that this was going to be, and it was a wild card, but I think that it was a little bit more of a calm race than I expected. But it was still a wild race, and it was placed perfectly in the playoffs because to have it as an elimination race, there's such an unknown. I mean, it created a whole another thing to get through in the playoffs. I loved it. There was so much drama. It's exactly what NASCAR needs, and they put it on NBC, which was great. And this is the kind of stuff that NASCAR needs to get going.
Well, it was great because, for years we've been saying the one thing that isn't in the playoffs is a road course. You have short tracks, you have intermediates, you have restrictor plates. Like, why haven't we got a road course yet? And then we got a road course, and it went great. I think it's perfect the way it is. You hear some rumors about other tracks maybe developing Rovals. I would definitely tell some of the other tracks, look into it, especially a track like Pocono, for example, where they have so many in
2 races a year.
And a lot of those races, layouts.
And a lot of the races at Pocono really aren't all that exciting. I think if you do one Pocono race on the oval or the triangle, and then one Pocono race on the Roval, I think that brings a whole nother element into it. It keeps it going. And that brings me to a question, probably the biggest question that I got from this whole weekend was, how should NASCAR handle this? They kind of have a gold mine on their hands right here. I think that's pretty clear. But how do you go about this now? Do you put, 2, 3 more of these on the schedule? Do you leave this one as the only one and make it like a big event? What do you do here?
I think what you do is that you realize that there's a thirst for road courses and short tracks. So what you do is you maybe go to Pocono and say, okay, Pocono has the infrastructure in place where they could pull this off and be successful. And then you add another road course that's not a Roval. Because the Roval concept is great in 1 or 2 settings, but in other settings, it will be a little boring. But for a track like Pocono that actually does road course stuff, like, I've been to Pocono a couple times now, like the infrastructure is there to make it happen and make it as true of a road course as possible. And then I think you try to add something like Road America or Mid-Atlanta, that NASCAR owns Mid-Atlanta too. So, add that track at that point, beef up the facilities so you can have a couple of road courses. 2 more, 1 more Roval-ish type of thing, and then 1 road course, and then you're good there on that. And maybe take away a date from a 1.5 mile. But it's interesting because you don't want to oversaturate at this point because it's a really good thing.
Yeah, I think that you're right. Oversaturating is exactly the problem. I think, that some of the 1.5 mile races early on were, good races. So they were just like, we need all of our tracks to be like this. And then, we've got the issue we have now.
Look at Chicagoland. Look at New Hampshire. Look at these tracks that only have one chance a year you go to. I think it helps. The less you are on a track, the less you can be on a track, the better the product is. And, I think you have your exceptions like your crown jewel races, but I don't know. I think, take away a couple of dates, take away a date from Kansas and put a road course in there, and you have some gold. You've struck gold. Now, don't mess it up.
Yeah, and obviously the biggest story of this race was how the two drivers kind of went. Martin Truex Jr., Jimmy Johnson battling for the win. Jimmy Johnson takes them both out. Ryan Blaney sneaks by him to go to the checkered flag. What were your thoughts on this? And just like, do you
absolutely love it. Jimmy Johnson, I have grown to love end of career Jimmy Johnson. Twilight Johnson is the coolest guy on the track. He is my favorite driver at this point. That's not my guy I root for. And, Jimmy, one more lap and he takes that clean. But he knew he had to do something. And he knew, you know what? I'm just going to go for a win, man. And he wheel hopped. But if he hadn't wheel hopped, he would have pulled it off. And it was so funny how he just clips Truex Jr. on the end of that. And then here comes Ryan Blaney. He almost wrecked because he was like, I can win. I got to get through here, Ryan Blaney coming out of nowhere, like, all right, I'm going to take a top 5. I'm going to take my points advance to next time. I'm going to win this race. It was so cool to see because, sometimes drivers get a little passive, you feel like. And this was not being passive. This was a guy who's like, I want another championship. I'm going to try it. It didn't work out. And I think the fallout from this has been hilarious. You going to go into that a little more? Or?
Yeah, we can get into it. I mean, you look at, I think that, first of all, Truex Jr. was upset about it at the end of the race.
He dumped him, too. He dumped him. But,
I understand the frustration, but I don't think that, going out and calling Jimmy Johnson an idiot there was warranted because, Jimmy Johnson made a mistake. And it's not like he took Truex out. Anyway, Truex was just sitting there. So, Johnson came back up the chicane and took him out. I don't think it was intentional or anything.
It was so unjustified to dump him at the end of the race because you know what? Jimmy Johnson is a 7-time champion.
Right.
Martin Truex Jr. got really lucky that he kind of fell into a super alliance at the right time. Martin Truex Jr. for the longest time was a fringe driver who only had a win or 2 and would be an 8th to 20th place guy on mediocre teams. And for MTJ to come out and call Johnson, who's won a 7, you can make the case he's the best driver ever. I think
that's fair.
You can make that case. In the modern era, the only driver that has done better, I would say, would be Jeff Gordon or Kyle Busch, right? But Johnson's got the championships to back it up. And to call a guy like that an idiot, I love how Jimmy Johnson handled it, too. He did a great job.
Yeah, and I mean, he took it like a true pro. And Jimmy Johnson, I mean, obviously, as mature as it gets. Both behind the wheel and behind a microphone at the end of the race when they're interviewing him. I mean, just a true professional. He'll never say anything out of line. Honestly, I mean, I have nothing but respect for the guy. I think that he had a great point. I mean, he said, I was going for the win. And he hasn't won yet this year. This is the first time in his entire career that he has gone winless in a season.
And, you got to go for a win. You got to go for a win.
And the crazy thing is, this shows the true colors of race car drivers right here, I think, is that he said if he would have just sat behind Truex, finished second, he would have won. He would have advanced to the next round just like that. No problems about it. But no, he wanted to win that race. He hasn't won since the spring race at Dover last year. So it's been a long time for Jimmy Johnson. He wanted that win bad. He went for it, and it didn't work out. I think that he will get more chances before the end of his career. I think Dover was a little bit.
I think next year they'll figure it out. I think Johnson's going to be great next year.
I think they're going to make some changes next year for sure.
Yeah, I think the changes are going to be you're going to give them cars that don't fail before the green flag waves. Wow.
Right. Yeah, I think that's where it comes in. But we'll get into we'll talk a little bit more about Jimmy Johnson and where that team is headed. And the direction of after just the aftermath of what was a disastrous race at Dover. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But we got to get to the Xfinity Series at Dover. What a good race that was.
Yeah, that was a quality race. I wasn't able to watch most of it, unfortunately. I was out shopping at the grocery store because, Nick, when you are in a relationship, you will realize that Saturday is grocery store day. So I missed actually probably 80% of this race. Unfortunate, but watched a little bit back on the replay. Good race, Christopher Bell. Just he's so dominant, and I don't understand why JGR is going to keep him down there for another year. It makes absolute no sense. I say move him up.
Yeah, I think that you've got to at this point. I mean, 6 wins this year. I think a championship would just be the icing on the cake. And right now, I mean, we go back a couple of months here, 3 months. I think that it's a different situation. You got 4 or 5 different drivers who were really pretty much even in this championship battle, but now Bell and Allgaier have pretty much they've mirrored each other's seasons so far. And they're neck and neck for this championship. It's going to be down between them unless, there's another guy who can sneak in there. But, I mean, it's Bell and Allgaier this year. Unless the two of them both wreck it at Homestead, one of them is going to win the championship.
I think Hemrick's got a chance to be a dark horse. Hemrick's been sneaky good.
I think to win the championship, you're going to have to win a race. I don't even mean that as a slight to Daniel Hemrick. I think that he just needs to find his way to victory lane.
I think there are two
before he can, get that mindset going into Homestead.
Daniel Hemrick reminds me of the type of guy like the Ryan Newman type where points-wise, Daniel Hemrick has been really good this year.
Oh, yeah.
He's consistent. He'll get the Homestead on consistency alone. And then I think he's got a chance to steal a race there. And this is what I love about the playoff format, but this is also what I hate about the playoff format. I don't like how it's one final race. I would rather have a 3-race sprint for the championship.
Yeah.
But it was pretty, it's going to be pretty good. I think Bell's going to run away with it. But Allgaier, he's good. He's good. They're both good cars. They're both top flight organizations. It's coming down. I don't think Sadler.
Sadler's fallen off in the second half here. I think since the news that he wasn't going to come back next year. And also I think a big turning point for him was that Daytona race back in July where he, lost to Kyle Larson by a couple inches down the stretch. I mean, he
should have finished third in.
Right. Granted, yes. But, I mean, he hasn't won this year. He hasn't finished better than 5th since May. I mean, he's just
pretty obvious that it was washed up, and I think it was getting pretty obvious around Daytona that when One Main Financial decided that they weren't going to be back on the card next year, that unless if Sadler were going to start, pulling out victories and getting a sponsor, he was going to be done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's had a good career. He's been around for 20 years now. So, I mean, I think it's a good career that ran its course. And that's good. That's cool. It's good for Elliott Sadler. I don't think that he's going to be. I think last year was his last shot to win a championship.
The question I pose to you is: Elliott Sadler a Hall of Famer?
No.
So you don't think that the 20 years worth of staying power outweighs the overall lack of being a superstar?
I think that he's one of those guys who is just a mainstay in the garage, but not a Hall of Fame talent by any means.
Because
he only had 4 Cup wins, and he doesn't have many more Xfinity wins. I think that you put a guy like Elliott Sadler in the Hall of Fame, that opens up the door for a lot of other guys who had 2 good years.
He had 3 Cup wins. And he has 13 Xfinity wins, and he's got a truck win, although he's never done full-time in the truck. But
I think
this is going to be a really interesting question because you look at him,
it would be based on merit pretty much.
You would look at him and you would say, maybe he's got 20, he's got 69 top 10s in Cup and 19 top 5s, 8 poles, so his Cup stats aren't really there. But his Xfinity stats, 13 wins, 105 top 5s, 224 top 10s. Like, you could make the argument that in the sense of B tier players, that Sadler may have done just enough to get himself in. And I don't think
you're comparing it to like a Ron Hornaday of last year's class. But the thing is with Ron Hornaday, he just had the championships. Right, Elliott Sadler, that's the thing that he hasn't done. And I think is a prerequisite for the Hall of Fame is you got to win a championship.
I think
if it's okay if you don't make the Cup Series and you dominate a series for 10 years, like Elliott Sadler's done with the Xfinity Series. He's done very well for the better part of 10 years down there. I just don't think that. Well, he obviously just doesn't have the championship to go with it.
I think he'll get in, and I'll tell you why I think he gets in. Because there's always that soft spot, in the people who vote for the Hall of Fame for that mainstay type of guy. And it'll be in a class, he'll be the 6th or 7th name on the class, and he'll be lower on the docket. And it'll be in 3 to 10 years. But I think he will get in eventually.
3 to 10 years.
Just based off the fact that, you spend 21 years in the top 2
right.
touring series. Yeah. And he wins a couple races just because he doesn't have a championship, but I think he eventually gets in based off that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more of an interest because, obviously he's much more of a legendary driver than the stats say. But I think the stats weigh pretty heavily. I think you have to have, if you're going to be one of those drivers who was a mainstay, just a legend because they were there for so long, I think that they've got to have the stats to kind of back that up a little bit, and at least one series. And 13 wins in the Xfinity Series, sure, that's impressive, but there's drivers who have 13 Cup wins and aren't in, and they shouldn't be. So I think that will be an interesting discussion down the road. But for now, I got to say, I just can't put him in.
If he wins the championship on his way out, do you put him in?
That's a whole other can of worms because, like I said, if you get that championship, that changes the whole discussion, I think. I want to talk about this, though. This has been the best Xfinity Series season that I can remember. And I mean, this is going back to, I started watching these races in probably 2005. So
I've been watching since 2001, and this is one of the most memorable seasons I've been able to see. And I want to know, why do you think it's been the most memorable?
I love it because you've got the multiple drivers battling for a championship. I think that you've got that. You had Hemrick and Cole Custer, Elliott Sadler. Those guys are kind of your secondary guys. They've faded the last couple of months, but for the better part of the season, this was a 5-man race. You've got Christopher Bell, Justin Allgaier. These guys have kind of distanced themselves from the field. But what I love about them is that you've got exactly what the Xfinity Series is displayed in these two guys. You've got Justin Allgaier, who's the seasoned vet, who didn't make it in Cup. He's got his
But he should get a second chance.
I think he should.
Die on that
I think
hill.
he should.
He needs a better chance.
I'm not saying he shouldn't. I definitely think he should. But, he's the veteran who's been around for a while. And then you got Christopher Bell, who's, 20 years old? I mean, this is his first year. This is what the Xfinity Series was put in place for. It's for the rookies and for the veterans who are trying to get back to Cup. And now you've got this 2-man battle between two guys who really embody those two parts of the sport. And I love that. It's so much fun to watch. And it's so tough for these guys to win these races, too. There is so much competition.
This is what I like about this, is that as we have limited Cup drivers more, the racing on the lower tier series gets better.
It really has. And I used to be a guy who said, listen, I want the Cup Series guys to be there because it puts people in the seats. I mean, if you say, hey, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, they're racing in this race, that's going to put more people in the seat than saying Matt Tifft and Brandon Jones will be there.
And I've always been the guy who's been like right in the middle and leans one way or the other way. I say, yeah, let them race 10 races out of the year. Right. And I think the way we're going is that, right now the Xfinity Series on its own is a better product when Cup drivers are not in it. And that's what I love about the playoffs. The playoffs, the Dash for Cash races,
those
the
dates
dates where they have separate. And I think what you could do with Xfinity is you could turn it into a test baby where you could send them to these weird tracks that you want to try in NASCAR and send them there, send the kids there, see how they do, see how they pull in, and build off that. But yeah, this has been probably the best season I've seen in a while.
Yeah, and one other thing that I want to say about this season is the storylines have been there too. You look at Kaz Grala, who's fought through all this stuff, from changing teams mid-season to being pretty much consistently in the top 10 to losing sponsorship, but still finishing in the top 10 when he races.
They're going to run full-time next year,
I believe so. I think that's a great story. You got Ross Chastain, the watermelon farmer, who got a shot because he's got talent. He went out and won a race.
Got a shot, and then had 3 straight great races.
Right. And then, I mean, it's just, and then Ryan Preece the last couple of years, not in an underfunded ride like the last 2 guys, but he took a shot on himself. He's this guy that kind of didn't really have a whole lot. He was a good modified driver, but was not really.
Well, the Ryan Preece story was great because, Ryan Preece used to be a guy who had enough money to pay for a ride on the team Ross Chastain has now, right? But he decided that he was going to shoot his shot and he was going to buy, what was it originally, 2 races?
2 races, yeah.
And now
he's finished second in New Hampshire and then 1 Iowa.
2 races in the Joe Gibbs car, and then he has parlayed that into more races. He's parlayed that into a Cup ride.
Right.
And I love it.
Yeah, and this is what makes the Xfinity Series great, because this is where the stories come from. I think a lot of the time this year, the stories that come out of Saturday have kind of dominated the Sunday.
This is where we need to put new fans. This is where we need to put new vision, right? We can work on keeping the fans that have been long-term on Sunday, but we need to get more eyes on the Xfinity Series, because this is where we learn who our drivers are.
Right.
This is where we learn, who that next wave is. And it's unfortunate for some of the guys right now that have already come up through that system. But, hey, it's awesome. The racing is great. The stories are great. It's going to be fun. I'm pulling for Chastain on Saturday and Sunday. I'll be pulling for Preece next year. I'll be pulling for Hemrick. I have fallen in love with Daniel Hemrick. I'm so glad he's getting the 31, and we'll get into that. But it's fun. It's fun to be able to do for the second tier series.
Right, yeah. It's been a great year, no doubt.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Cup Series, though. So we take a look at the results from the Dover Cup race. This was a lot of fun. Chase Elliott obviously getting the win. And after kind of gifted this one, I think.
Gift wrapped.
Right. This race belonged to Stuart Haas, and Kevin Harvick had the problem. He had to come down pit road. Clint Boyer had whatever happened to the suspension of that car and plowed up the wall in turn 4. Eric Almirola was, blindfolded walking to victory, and the caution came out, and then he caused a wreck.
Second time this year for Eric.
Right.
It's sad.
Yeah, and so Elliott kind of on the 2-tire strategy. Brad Keselowski was on that tire strategy with him, but Keselowski got taken out by Almirola. So this race was kind of, excuse me, this race was kind of Chase Elliott's to lose, and he got the restart with Denny Hamlin. And just drove away, didn't give Denny Hamlin a chance to wreck him. When was the last time,
and I go back to the days of the 2014, because this is basically the 2014, they just changed the number. When was the last time a strategy call worked for the 2014? When was the last time that has ever worked for this HQ?
Right.
Boy, you would feel like, who is his crew chief?
Alan Gustafson.
When was the last time Gustafson has actually had a call go his way?
Right.
What? It's been a while.
Right.
And this one went his way. And it was interesting to see a guy like Chase Elliott, who is going to have a good day next weekend or this weekend at Talladega to be able to compete.
He was behind the cut line.
And he was going to have to pull something out of nowhere, and now he's got a win, so now he gets to go into Talladega. He could just ride around 40th all day if he really wants to.
Right. And Chase Elliott, he is a good plate racer.
He is.
He just has a problem with getting taken out in those races.
Well, Chase Elliott is also a little.
Right.
If you put Chase Elliott and Ricky Stenhouse next to each other, they both spin each other at the same time with blocks.
I think, but they're both very talented at the plate tracks because of their aggressiveness. I think Elliott, with that pressure off, I think that he could be in contention to win this race. He almost won this race last year, don't forget, and then he went for that hole between Daniel Suarez, and Suarez cut down on him, and a mess happened.
That was a finish. Well, it's interesting because, now that Chase Elliott, he had a lot of pressure going on him this year, and it felt like it was going to be a make or break season because he hadn't been able to pull it off,
Yep. 2 years, no wins.
It was 2 years in the 24 of no wins. This is year 2 of the 9 car, right? No, this is year 1 of the 9 of the car back. And, you kind of felt getting towards the middle of the season, like, when is Chase Elliott going to actually, like, live up to any of this hype? Then he got the win at Watkins Glen, so he's like, all right, he's got win number 1. Then he was able to get win number 2, and it's going to be so nice.
And that lifted the pressure off his shoulders.
Now that he's got a couple of wins, he doesn't have the pressure of he's got to win again.
That team was struggling in the first half of the season. They were not good. They were, riding around 10th, 13th place in points for the first half of the year. Then something clicked. They ran well. I don't remember what the race before Watkins Glen was.
New Hampshire, wasn't it?
Yes, it was New Hampshire.
No, it was Pocono. Yeah, because it went New Hampshire, Pocono. Because I went to 2 races in a row.
He ran well at New Hampshire. I remember sitting at the New Hampshire race. Chase Elliott had been, a 10th place car all season long.
And it was like top 5.
He goes out, he wins his stage, he leads, he shows decent speed, and I'm like,
they fall off at the end of it, but it's like, then he goes to Pocono and does the same thing.
Did the same thing at Pocono.
And then he pulls the win off that. They figured something out. They were the first Chevy team, I'd say the second Chevy team to figure something out. Richard Childress Racing figured something out, but they couldn't keep it consistent.
Right. But Dylan's been looking good the last couple of weeks.
Dylan's been fast. I think Dylan's a better driver than I give him credit for.
I was reading though today, so I'll back Chase Elliott. I mean, I'm a Chase Elliott fan. I like what he does. I like the way he handles himself. But I read an article today on NASCAR.com that I thought was just a little bit ridiculous when they said, and they put the words analysis in this as well, and I'm not sure how much analysis was actually used when they say that Chase Elliott is now the championship favorite for the Cup Series.
Dumbest article. This is the one thing that I hate about Chase Elliott. It is that the minute Chase Elliott does anything, NASCAR pumps so much into the guy. You would think he is the second coming of Dale Sr. If Dale Sr., Richard Petty, and Jeff Gordon had a kid, it'd be Chase Elliott. It's like the hype, back off. He won on a strategy call, and thinking of the cars in the chase, you got your big 3, which are better. Brad Keselowski has been better this year. Joey Logano has been just as consistent. Who else is in there? Eric Almirola has a fast car. Kyle Larson should be a favorite, but he's got to win this weekend to get there. But, he is not the championship favorite. He is a fringe contender.
Right.
And he might be the second favorite to get that 4th spot, but he is not winning a championship.
Right, yeah. I mean, he definitely got handed this race. I don't think that...
Yeah.
Excuse me. It wasn't a race where he went out and had the fastest car.
No, by no means.
Yeah, he won it on a strategy call. So I don't agree with that in any way. I do want to get to Eric Almirola though. Man, this guy just can't figure it out.
Snake bitten. Oh man, this guy. This is not. What is this? Is this the 3rd time this year where he has been in the catbird seat only to lose? He almost won the day. He should have won the Daytona 500. He should have won at New Hampshire. He should have won at Dover. And this guy is just, man. He also could have won. He should have won at Chicagoland. Eric Almirola, talking about the bridesmaid who's probably getting sick of not catching a bouquet. The dude. The dude has done so well after so many years of being in a crappy RPM car. And now to just be heartbroken again, it's like, I felt for the dude because I was really pulling from the one. I want Eric to get back into victory lane. I really do.
And, I was thinking about it as I watched, his race fall apart yesterday. I mean, last year at this time, you think about it, I viewed Eric Almirola as just a body who had sponsorship dollars. He didn't do a whole lot at RPM.
This is where you and I are differ on this.
But I think I want to get to the point here because at this time last year, I was like, okay, this guy is just, he's washed up. RPM. I don't think I realized, what state RPM was in performance-wise. And I think the same thing's happening with Bubba Wallace right now. You got a talented driver who's just
RPM, and I've made this point. Have I gone on my RPM rant to you about how if it wasn't for the fact that it was Richard Petty Motorsports, it'd be just a glorified go-fast racing? Have I gone on that rant to you yet?
I don't think so.
I'll tell you it after we get off the air because it's too long, but... RPM, the gist of it is RPM hasn't been relevant since the 90s.
Right.
And Eric Almirola got them their only win in the last 10 years, and it was a rain-shortened win, but they haven't actually won a race to completion since 2003 or 4. And you would
I think
see
it's
this.
been farther. I think it's
You
been,
would see this Almirola guy every week, and I was always high on the dude. I was
Right.
always like, he's good. He is so good because
he showed talent when he was with Joe Gibbs back in the day.
he was always out driving cars. You know, he came in at the end of DEI, like the death of DEI, and he did fine there. He came in and outdrove that 43. And I knew the minute he went to Stuart Haas, I was like, this is awesome. To get a guy to see this, to get this guy a chance in a car that can actually win, and he's done well this year.
Yeah, I was so wrong when I thought, that he was just another body. The thing that really impresses me about Eric Almirola is how he has come into a completely different situation this year. This is the first time in his life that he's dealing with top-notch equipment. And it's been such a good fit right away.
Yeah, and I think it helps that, he came into a car that was being underperformed. Danica Patrick, for all that she has done for women in the sport, which is big, you cannot understate it, she underperformed in that car. So bringing Eric in, a guy who's used to out-driving bad equipment and bringing a team that should be top 25, getting them 15th sometimes, is a breath of fresh air. He's done so well.
Right. I think that you look at it, though, and look at Clint Boyer, for an example. It took him a year to, get himself figured out after going from subpar equipment and into the big-time ride at Stuart Haas. He struggled that first year. I mean, he did not come close to winning a race. Now, this year, he has 2 wins. And I think that I don't think he's a serious championship contender, but I think that he's got a real shot to make it to the round of 8, which is a tremendous step forward.
If Clint Boyer won the championship, do you think his bender would go longer than Ovi's? I don't even know. This is a serious question, Nick.
I don't think you can even compare them because you can't compare Ovi and Clint Boyer. That's just too completely
I feel like Boyer would go into Daytona drunk. So he would just drink for the 90 day, in a row. It would just be a party every night.
I cannot, put an exact word on it, but I think that would just be the party of all time.
It's funny because you mentioned the Stuart Haas, and it's like Stuart Haas has always been this. It's like Nick Saban's Alabama football program, right? It's like the program for drivers that can't drive good but are actually talented because they've been on trash teams. So come here and drive good, right? They did it with Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman did pretty well there. They did it with the end of Tony Stewart's career. They revived that, as the owner. I'm trying to think of who else has gone through Stuart Haas racing.
Clint Boyer,
Kevin
Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch was at the end. Kurt Busch was at a crossroads with Phoenix Racing and with Furniture Row, and Stuart Haas brought him in. He's won races. He's a
Daytona 500 champ.
Right. He's won Bristol.
Kevin Harvick was overdriving.
Harvick was a mid-pack guy at best. He wasn't winning races. There was a stretch in 07, I believe it was. He won the Daytona 500 that didn't win for 2.5 years.
Stuart Haas Racing is the rehabilitation team for drivers that are really good on teams that suck. You go to Stuart Haas, you learn how to win again. And Eric Almirola is going to learn how to win. Clinton Boyer's learned how to win.
But no, this whole Almirola thing, I understand that he's not quite at the level of Kevin Harvick, but just the way that this team has gelled in such a short amount of time. He has 12 top 10s this year.
He'll be the second best driver on that team next year, too.
I think he will be.
If Busch leaves, he'll be the second best driver on that team next year.
He has 12 top 10s this year. Danica Patrick, in 5 years with that team, had 10. So I think that Eric Almirola is not done just completely shattering our expectations by any means. I think that we're looking at a guy right here who 2 to 3 years down the road, as he gets more accustomed to Stuart Haas racing and, running up front becomes more of a habit and not just a pleasant surprise for him. I think that we're looking at Eric Almirola, as I stumble over my words, Eric Almirola as a potential champion of the sport. I think that he's got that potential. I think that he's not done surprising us just
Nick,
yet.
You need to go to the broadcasting school for broadcasters that can't talk good, bud. But I just had to get that in there. But yeah, no, Eric, he's gonna. I think he has got a chance to win a championship here in the next 10 years or next 5 years. I think.
Yeah, I mean he's
getting up there in age.
Right, I see that potential. I think for a NASCAR driver, he's still relatively young. I think he's in his mid-30s.
Let me look up his age.
Look it up. While Dustin does that, we are going to get ready to welcome on our guest of the evening here. He drives the number 18 Toyota Tundra for Kyle Busch Motorsports in the Camping World Truck Series. He is in a tight championship battle right now out there as they get ready to go to Talladega this weekend. Let's bring on Noah Gragson. Today's guest is the driver of the number 18 Toyota for Kyle Busch Motorsports in a serious championship hunt for the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series title trophy. It's Noah Gragson. Noah, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm pretty good, man. So we'll get right into it here. When did you first know that you wanted to have a career in racing? And did you really was there a moment at some point where you realized, hey, I'm kind of good at this?
Well, I always enjoyed racing my buddies on my mountain bike, my skateboard, go-karting, all that kind of stuff when I was younger. But really started racing when I was about 13 years old and back in 2012 and ran Bandoleros, and so tested a Bandolero out. And the first time I tested it, I knew I enjoyed racing, like real cars. And so just kind of pursued that. And then the eye-opening moment for myself and thinking that I might have a shot at making this a career is my third career start in the K&N Series. I ended up finishing with a win at that race, and so that was a big deal for myself to win my third career K&N Series start. In my first year ever racing that kind of car, coming right out of Legend Cars, going straight to a big car. So that was really special for myself, and I was just hoping for maybe a couple top 10 finishes throughout the season. So it was good to be able to do that. And, that's really the main thing that struck my mind.
As your second full season in the Truck Series kind of comes to a close here in the playoffs, looking back, what ways do you think that you've grown as a driver in the last couple of years?
I think just a lot of maturity on and off the racetrack. And when I was racing in the K&N Series, it was more of just show up to the racetrack and go race and have some fun. Now it's a job, and now it's you got to put a lot of work into it throughout the week. Currently watching some race film for Talladega and just going through some preparation stuff. So working out a lot more, trying to get healthy, and need to be all in for what's to come.
Now, obviously, the big news a couple weeks ago that you're headed off to the Xfinity Series next year, leaving Kyle Busch and Toyota to head over to work with Junior Motorsports and Chevrolet next year. Take us through that decision and kind of what went into it.
Well, first I want to say thanks to everyone at Kyle Busch Motorsports and Toyota and TRD. They've been a huge help throughout my racing career so far, and who knows, might be in a Toyota in the future, might not. I don't really know what the future holds for me after Junior Motorsports, but it's a great opportunity to be able to race for Kyle Busch Motorsports in the Truck Series, and so to be able to move on next year with Junior Motorsports, I'm really excited to do that. It was didn't really have any more opportunity at Joe Gibbs Racing to run a full season in the 2019 season, so we decided to look at our options, and that was our best option to go over to Junior Motorsports, and they really liked me, and so it should be a great opportunity for a young driver like myself.
Do you think there's going to be, any added pressure next year as you take over for a driver like Elliott Sadler, who's been in the sport for what feels like 20 years?
Yeah, I definitely think there's some added pressure, big shoes to fill with Elliott Sadler leaving that ride and me replacing that. It's going to be definitely that pressure, but it's something us race car drivers love is to go out there and capitalize on opportunities like that. So like I said, I just have a great opportunity in front of myself that I'm very fortunate to have a lot of great people to help me get to this point in my racing career, and now it's just time to go make the most of it.
Yeah, you say you've gotten a lot of help from a lot of great people. Talk about great people. Who better than, Kyle Busch, and then moving on to Dale Jr. next year? What kind of impact does having those guys as kind of a mentor and a boss have on you as a race car driver?
It's big to have Kyle Busch as a mentor and kind of my development and growth throughout the truck series, and I lean on him quite a bit as a guy to ask questions and pick his brain whenever I can. So he's been really good to me and the rest of the drivers here at Kyle Busch Motorsports. He goes out of his way to help us. So it's good for us young guys, just trying to learn and take every race we can and get better and better. So he's been a tremendous help for us. Yeah,
for sure. Now, your first win in the Truck Series last year came at Martinsville, and it was definitely one to remember. Was the whole fence climb celebration kind of a spur of the moment thing, or did you have that planned out?
I did that in the K&N Series whenever I'd win, and then I was like entertaining the crowd, pumping them up, and just getting them excited. So did it in the Truck Series, and then hopefully we can do it a couple more times throughout this season in the trucks, and then hopefully some more next year in the Xfinity Series. But it's just something different that I know Tony Stewart's done it, a couple other guys, Dario Franchitti, I think. Or no, not Dario Franchitti. One of the IndyCar guys. Yeah, Helio Castroneves. I get them mixed up, but they would do it. So it's, I don't know, it's something different that not a lot of guys do, and pumps the crowd up for sure.
Now, even though you're up in the NASCAR National Series and you have a big impact there, you still race late models quite a bit. Do you have a late model win that kind of stands out above the other ones?
Yeah, the Winchester 400. It's coming up here next week, actually. So that'll be really cool. I wish I was running it. I'm not getting the opportunity to run it. We're going to be in Talladega racing the trucks, but I went out on top, I guess, now that I'm not racing it this year. So that's good, at least.
And I'll get you out of here on this question here, Noah. What's your favorite track that you've run so far? And is there a track that you have that you would like to run at some point, but you haven't yet?
Yeah, I think I love Sonoma. I've only been able to run there in the K&N car. I really enjoy road course racing, and I feel like I really enjoy currently going to Dover. I love Dover. Not even racing there, but just making laps there. Like, it's probably the most fun track to make laps at, just because you drive down the straightaway and it's banked, and then you drive all the way down into the corner. Normally you're driving into the corner, and now you like jump off down into a corner and go bowl.
You've got that big drop off there.
It's something different. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But I'd say probably Dover or Sonoma.
Well, that's awesome, man. Good luck in your hunt for the Camping World Truck Series title. We'll all be pulling for you up here in Vermont. And good luck this weekend at Talladega, too. That's always a fun race to watch. So thanks for coming on today, Noah, and maybe we'll have you on again sometime.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
So that was Noah Gregson for you guys. That was a fun interview.
That's good.
He's I really think that kid has a lot of potential. He's in the Truck Series, going up to Xfinity Series next year. I think that he is going to be a Cup Series mainstay, in the next 10 years. I think that he's going to make a big name for himself. So moving on, Talladega is this coming week.
Oh,
Dustin
Nick,
gets
have
ready
we wrecked
for
enough
Talladega.
cars yet? Have we wrecked enough cars?
I don't think so.
Maybe if we turn, maybe if we wreck half the field and then turn the other half of the field and go the opposite way.
Is this a Tony Stewart quote from like 2010?
This is my thing. Whenever I go into Talladega weekend, I think of Tony Stewart. Like, whenever we go into that's probably one of the top 5 favorite NASCAR interviews ever.
It was one of the best. Tony Stewart hated Talladega with a capital H.
Hated it.
He won there once, but technically lost because of the yellow line rule. So that place was just Tony Stewart's personal hell for the entirety of his career. I mean, the last lap in like 2014, 2012, I think it was, when he flipped over the top of literally everyone.
Was that also the Soda Cookies interview, or was that another interview he did Soda Cookies in?
Soda Cookies was later on, I think, because you're talking about the turn the field around backwards one, right?
Yeah.
That was when I remember he still raced for Office Depot and Old Spice then, and then the Soda Cookies one was like when he had Mobil One as a sponsor.
Yes.
But anyway, moving on to more important things. Talladega's this weekend. This is the wild card race of the second round of the playoffs. We have seen, we saw the Roval being the wild card race of the first round, and it was pretty wild, but I think Talladega is going to top it because if it's anything like the other...
Cars are going to be flipping.
Right, if it's anything like the other three plate track races, I mean, plate racing in NASCAR is completely gone off the wall.
I love it.
It's great, yeah, I love it. It's next to impossible to win these races now.
Oh yeah, it's total crapshoot.
Because, there's 5 to 6 big ones per race now, and they all come in like the last 40 laps. So I'm excited for this race. I think that there's going to be a lot of action, and we're going to see a lot of different storylines. But more importantly, we're going to see guys all but get eliminated.
Well, see, this is the thing about this race, is that when we go here in the spring, and it's the same thing about Daytona the first 2 times, is like, you see a lot of riding around in stage 1 or 2 because there's not really a lot of line. This is a race where you got a guy like Kyle Larson, Clint Boyer, Eric, Ryan Blaney. You got these guys who have to get points. So stage 1, stage 2, they are going to be going full send on this. And, we might have a big one on lap 30 looking at how this race is set to play out, because it's just... What is it, 180 laps this weekend?
Yeah.
They're going to have to figure this out, and then you're going to have pit strategy. This is going to be a great race.
Yeah, I'm excited for it because, like you said, you've got those guys who need to be up front. They can't afford to be, riding 10th or whatever, because that's where the crashes happen. And, if the big one happens 2-3 rows in front of you, you're done. There's nothing you can do for the most part, unless there's just an absolute miracle. And so that's why, there's going to be a ton of guys just constantly fighting for this track position. And I think, like you said, there's going to be a lot more.
It doesn't even matter where you are on the track. As we saw in July, you could be in first place and you could be in the big one. It doesn't matter. And in a race like this, you might have somebody could take... Actually, both plate races, or 2 of the 3 plate races being in number 1 didn't mean you were safe. It means you're even a bigger target. The only place you're safe is like in 40th position, about 30 seconds off the draft.
Right.
It's going to be really interesting to see how this race plays out, because, you have your big 3 who Busch and Harvick are basically locked in. Truex is an interesting spot because he needs to have a top 20 day.
Yeah, Truex did not have a good run at Dover. I mean, obviously involved in the wreck with Almirola at the very end of it. So he's kind of, I don't think Truex is as safe as people kind of originally thought he would be.
But if he just rides around the back and doesn't do anything stupid and waits for the big one to happen, he would be the guy who I'd be like, all right, ride around 35th, wait for the big one. After the big one happens, come up and go aggressive for that.
Right. So before we go into Talladega, I just want to see how wrong we're going to be with our picks here. But I do want to go. We're gonna pick who will not advance before Talladega. Okay. So I'm going to go first. My first guy is Ryan Blaney. I just think that Ryan Blaney is like Chase Elliott in the fact that he will race a little bit too aggressively at the plate tracks. And while he's very good there, and while he's got the Penske power under the hood, which is the best restrictor plate track power, I just think that Ryan Blaney is going to not make it out of Talladega, and he is not locked in anymore with the Charlotte Roval win. I think Blaney is on the chopping block, especially with guys like Boyer, Almirola, and Larson stuck behind. I think Larson is going to be the guy that moves on out of here.
I don't think he is. I think Larson is bad at Talladega. I think Larson's only chance to pull this off is if he unloads at Kansas.
Well, I think Larson's going to win Kansas, honestly. We'll get to that next week. But, I mean, remember that first Kansas race, Larson led the majority of the race, then Blaney and him made the controversial contact that took him out. I think Kansas is a place where Larson will come out and he's just going to go win that race.
And this is also a race where, if you're Alex Bowman, Alex Bowman has been good at plate tracks. Bowman has always been good at plate tracks. So this is a chance where Bowman can steal a win and sneak into the round. And, if your guys like Kurt Busch, Joey Logano, I got the standings in front of me, Logano is 31 above the cut line, but he won Talladega this year. So, he's a favorite going in there. Brad Keselowski is always winning the fall Talladega race since 2000, even though he always wins one Talladega race a year. It's like the Patriots having 3 timeouts. It just happens. Kurt Busch is having a great year. Ryan Blaney, I don't know if Ryan Blaney's going to be out, but I could picture Ryan Blaney having this day where he finishes 3rd in a stage and 10th in this stage and is just there towards the end of the race and gets a top 10.
Right.
You look at these guys' agendas like Chase Elliott, you do whatever you want, you're safe. Kevin Harvick, do whatever you want, you're safe. Kyle Busch, do whatever you want. Martin Truex Jr., you have to have a good
right. From Truex on down, you've got to those are the drivers that are going to be under the most pressure.
Truex and Logano are just bring it home in one piece, have good days. Busch, Keselowski are bring it home in one piece. You can be a little aggressive, but watch what's going on around you. And then you got this whole mess of Blaney, Almirola, Boyer, Larson, Bowman, who have to come out and try to win this race.
Yeah, for Alex Bowman, I mean, the season's over if he doesn't win this race at Talladega next week. I mean, and I think that I'm not saying he can't do it, but I think that this is his last shot to win. But for a guy who's hasn't won yet, I'm not going to put any money in the bank on Alex Bowman going out and pulling the upset. 32 points back, I think that's just too far. But props to Alex Bowman because, he's in the round of 12 this year. You look at William Byron, the other, I guess you can't really call Bowman a rookie per se, but he pretty much is. And
Bowman, no, he's not. He raced 3 or 4 years on bad teams. Bowman's a good driver who's finally kind of getting good.
Right.
Bowman caught a bad year for Chevy too, because if Bowman was in a Chevy last year, we would see him in the round of 12 and be like, all right, he's in the round of 12. But because the Camaro has been so awful, and the only team that has been able to figure the Camaro out enough right now is Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson. So Bowman, he's got a chance to sneak in, and they got a chance to figure it out some more.
I think he has overachieved this year, though.
He's done a very good job.
He has done very well, especially when you compare him to William Byron. I think that while technically he's not a rookie, I think that those are two very comparable drivers because they've never been in this situation before. So what a big race for the trucks as well. That race is actually broadcasted live on Fox, nationally televised this weekend. The truck race is always, to me, that kind of fun race leading up to the Cup race at Talladega. I think there's a lot that could go on here. You got the two guys that are locked in, obviously, with Haley and Enfinger because they won the last 2 races. But what are you going to be looking for from the truck race?
Looking at the truck race, Johnny Sada, Noah Gragson, you good, basically, unless something goes horrifically wrong. Brett Moffitt needs to have a good day. Matt Crafton has to try to win. Ben Rhodes and Stuart Friesen have to try to win because I think this is a cut race for them.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And, Crafton is 7 above. Rhodes is 7 behind. Friesen is 10 behind. Moffitt is 18 up. And Moffitt just has to have a good day. Have a good day if you're Moffitt. The only one I'd be really nervous about would be Matt Crafton because I don't see either of these guys really winning. I don't see Stuart or Ben actually pulling anything off.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy this year, though, how Matt Crafton has gone from, this champion and constantly a guy who runs top 5 every week to being this guy. He's kind of an afterthought. He's been kind of overrun by the kids this year.
Well, it's interesting because they switched to Ford just at the beginning of the year on a dime, too. So it's. I think that's a product of switching teams, or not switching teams, but switching manufacturers really early on in the process or late into the process.
Right. So some silly season stuff. I mean, all sorts of stuff has gone on since we've last been on the air. Daniel Hemrick announces the driver of the 31 car next year, replacing Ryan Newman.
Newman's going to the 6.
Yes, Newman off to the 6. The piece of news I'm most excited for is Ryan Preece to the 47.
I'm so happy for
I think this one's going to be interesting because if I was Preece, obviously you got to take it if you're offered a Cup ride. But at the same time, I mean, this is a big step for him. He's running a partial schedule in the Xfinity Series now, full-time modified tour, and now you're full-time Cup. And I get he's run full-time Xfinity before, but man, I think this is a big jump. And I'd hate to see a talent like Ryan Preece ruined because he went up too soon.
I think Ryan Preece, this is his one chance. I think this is, he's looking at his, because Ryan Preece, age-wise, he's getting up there a little bit. I think he's mid-20s. Let me look that up. Yeah, Ryan Preece is 27 years old. So he looks at this chance and he's like, this is my last real shot to get into the Cup at my prime.
This is a shot.
And this is a team that wants to put money into the operation, too.
Right.
And that's what I like. And I think he'll do well. I'm really excited for the Hemrick move. Hemrick is going to be better than we think he's going to be.
Yeah, I think that he's kind of like the thing about Hemrick is that he's just a hard worker, and I really, really like that. Now, some news, some possible news tweeted out by Adam Stern today, who's, a pretty reliable guy when it comes to this stuff. We'll get to this real quick. Possibly to the Matt DiBenedetto to the number 95 car next year. LFR's got a press conference scheduled for tomorrow, but they haven't said what it is.
It's on Wednesday, I believe.
Wednesday.
But it's interesting because LFR was in this place where they were going to try to get Hemrick, they were going to try to get Suarez, they were going to try to go to 2 cars, and then there was just a bunch of negotiations happen, and the winner out of all these negotiations is a guy like Matt DiBenedetto, who's like, you know what? I don't want to be in the back of the pack. I'm going to just go for it. I'm going to see if I can find a fast Xfinity car. And then out of the sky comes this 95 ride
who might just have an alliance with Joe Gibbs next year.
Which, even if they didn't have the alliance with Joe Gibbs, is better than what DiBenedetto is in. And then it's like, DiBenedetto gets a chance to probably drive the 95 and just falls right into the 95. And it'll be interesting to see. I'm going to wait till they confirm it, but it's really good. The kid's got a talent. He's a good racer.
And real quick, before we get to our fantasy picks for Talladega, which should be a complete disaster, I'm sure, we have the 2019 rules package was leaked, announced. We got a leaked picture of it tweeted out earlier today, I saw.
It was officially announced.
Okay. But the spoiler, the real rear spoiler on these things is about a foot up in the air, and they've got the kind of front splitter back a little bit too. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think these cars remind me a lot of the 2014 cars. If you remember,
I think it's going to be like 2014. I think everybody's going to complain about it, but I think it's going to be.
It was so the racing was so good compared to what it is now. So I think that's going to be a good thing. So we'll see how that gets how that sorts itself out. But quickly here in our last 2 minutes, let's do a quick fantasy draft. Dustin, I'll let you have the first pick.
All right, we're going to start with Joey Logano.
And I am going to counter you with his teammate, Brad Keselowski.
And then I'm going to double counter you with Ryan Blaney.
Wow, okay. I'm going to go with Eric Almirola. I think that he really wants it this weekend.
I'll take Kyle Busch.
I will go with Chase Elliott.
I will take Kyle Larson, and I have one more pick after that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with Clint Boyer, stay with this whole Stewart-Haas thing.
And we're going to go with an underdog who normally does well on these. Let's go with Dinger. Allmendinger.
Ooh. And with my last pick, I'm going to take the man who will wreck you if you are in his way, Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
Stenhouse Jr.
Yes. So that'll be all that we have for you here tonight on Northwest Access TV. I am Nick. He is Dustin. This has been the Inside Groove. We will see you next week, once again, right here, same time, same day. Just tune in, folks, right here on Northwest Access TV. Have a good night, folks.